Years ago, my dad kicked me out for being gay. Now, he pays rent to live in my house.
I still remember the way the air felt that evening, thick, heavy, like it knew what was about to happen. I had been rehearsing the words for weeks, standing in front of my mirror late at night, whispering them to my reflection, hoping that when I finally said them out loud, they wouldn't tremble so much. My father was at the dinner table, halfway through his second beer. The television was on in the background, playing some rerun he wasn't really watching. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure he could hear it. "Dad," I began, my voice more fragile than I wanted. "I need to tell you something." He didn't even look up from his plate. "What is it?" I swallowed. "I'm gay." The fork in his hand froze midair. Slowly, he turned his head toward me. For a second, I thought he hadn't heard me properly, but the stillness in his eyes said otherwise. "What did you just say?" I repeated it, firmer this time. "I'm gay." Silence. Then, the sound of his fork clattering onto the plate. He stood up so quickly, the chair scraped harshly against the floor. "No son of mine is gonna be a damn faggot," he said, his voice shaking not with sadness, but with fury. I flinched. I had imagined a lot of possible reactions. Disappointment, denial, maybe even cold silence. But not this pure and filtered hatred. "Get out," he growled. "Right now. You want to live like that? Then go. But not under my roof." "Dad, please," I said, "get out." He didn't hit me. He didn't have to. His words hit harder than any punch could. I ran upstairs and grabbed the small duffel bag I always kept packed for emergencies. I never thought this would be the emergency I'd use it for. I stuffed in some clothes, my phone charger, a few photos, and the watch my mom gave me before she passed. As I walked out, my dad didn't even look at me. He just stood in the hallway, arms crossed, jaw tight, like he was holding back more words, uglier words. The door slammed behind me, and just like that, I had no home. The night was cold, but my cheeks were burning. I didn't cry, not then. I was too stunned to cry. I walked down the street, texting the only person I could think of, my best friend, Jordan. He picked up immediately. "You okay?" "No, can I crash at your place?" "Say no more. I'll be outside in 5. True to his word, Jordan pulled up and didn't ask any questions. He just looked at me and said, "You told him, didn't you?" I nodded. That was the only time I cried that night. In the passenger seat of Jordan's car, safe, but shattered. When we got to his place, his mom had already set up the guest room. She hugged me like she'd known me her whole life, and I realized in that moment I had lost a father, but maybe I had found something better, people who saw me, accepted me, and didn't turn away. Still, that night, lying awake in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop the replay in my head. The look on my dad's face, the venom in his voice, the way he threw me out like I was nothing. I promised myself one thing. If I ever made it, if I ever built a life worth something, I wouldn't just survive. I'd come back stronger. I'd come back so strong, he wouldn't even recognize the man I'd become. But I didn't know then just how far that promise would take me. Jordan's house became my lifeline. His family didn't tiptoe around me or treat me like I was fragile. They welcomed me in like I'd always been a part of their world. His mom, Cheryl, made pancakes every Saturday morning, like clockwork. His little sister, Maya, made fun of my bedhead. And Jordan, he never once made me feel like a burden. I started helping out around the house to ease the guilt, doing dishes, folding laundry, even mowing the lawn without being asked. Cheryl would just smile and say, "You don't have to earn your place here, sweetie," but it still felt like I needed to. After all, I wasn't just some kid crashing on a friend's couch. I had been kicked out, disowned. I took a part-time job at a used bookstore downtown. The owner, a grumpy old guy named Marty, didn't care about anything except showing up on time and keeping the register straight. It was perfect. Books didn't judge me. Numbers didn't care who I loved. At night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling fan in Jordan's guest room, and wonder if my dad ever thought about me. Did he regret it? Did he miss me? Or was he sitting in the same kitchen chair, sipping his beer, pretending I never existed? One evening, I saw Jordan standing on the porch, pacing with his phone to his ear. I stepped out just in time to hear him say, "No, sir." He's not coming back. You made that clear." I froze. When he hung up, he looked at me with that nervous guilt in his eyes. "It was your dad," he said quietly. "He called my mom's phone." My throat went dry. "What did he want?" "He asked if you were still here. Said he wanted to make sure we weren't encouraging your lifestyle. Cheryl told him to lose our number." I should have felt angry. I wanted to feel angry, but instead, all I felt was that familiar ache, the kind you get when someone confirms they never really saw you in the first place. That night, I made a vow to myself. I would never beg for his love again. I'd build something better, a future that didn't need his approval to mean something. If he ever saw me again, it would be on my terms. And so began the long road. School, work, saving every dollar, holding on to every scrap of dignity I could find. I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing. Because deep down, I knew, one day, I'd face him again. And when I did, I wouldn't be that broken kid at the dinner table anymore. Community college wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I remember walking into my first night class introduction to business with my secondhand backpack and a notebook I bought from the dollar store. I was terrified I'd be the outsider, that everyone would know I was the kid who got disowned and was crashing at a friend's place. But no one cared. That was the beauty of college. People were too busy with their own lives to judge mine. I worked days at the bookstore, evenings in class, and late nights at Jordan's kitchen table, studying until my eyes burned. Jordan would stay up with me sometimes. Even if he wasn't studying, he'd bring me tea, make dumb jokes to keep me awake, or just sit there quietly while I underlined pages and scribbled notes. I think he knew how much I needed someone in my corner, even if I never said it. The bookstore became more than a job. Marty, the owner, slowly warmed up to me. One day, he tossed me a key and grunted, "You open tomorrow." It was a small gesture, but I almost cried. It meant trust. It meant he saw me as reliable, something I hadn't felt in a long time. 2 semesters in, I landed a small internship with a local real estate agent who shopped at the store. Her name was Vanessa, and she was a whirlwind of energy and ambition. "You've got good instincts," she told me after a week. "Don't waste them." She let me shadow her during open houses and taught me how property values worked, how to read people, how to negotiate. I soaked it all in like a sponge. For the first time in my life, I started to believe in something beyond survival. I started to picture a future, not just any future, but one where I could afford my own place, where I could help other kids like me, where I could look my father in the eye not with resentment, but with indifference. I stopped checking his Facebook profile after that. I stopped hoping he'd call. Instead, I started making plans. And the first one was this: one day, I would own a home. Not to spite him, not to prove anything, but to finally feel like I belonged somewhere completely, and on my own terms. By the time I turned 22, I had done what I once thought impossible, saved enough for a down payment on a house. It wasn't glamorous or big. It was a tired old place on the far edge of town with yellowed siding, a porch that leaned like it had given up decades ago, and weeds that had claimed the front yard like squatters. But to me, it was a castle. It was the first thing in my life that was truly, undeniably mine. The day I got the keys, I didn't cry. I thought I would. I pictured myself sobbing in the driveway, falling to my knees in victory. But the truth is, I just stood there, silent, staring at the chipped door with my name on the deed. I think I was too stunned, not by what I'd achieved, but by the fact that I had really done it without him, without my father, without anyone I was born tied to. Jordan showed up that evening with pizza and a 6-pack. He handed me a houseplant and said, "To make it official, you're a homeowner now." Cheryl came by with the lasagna and her famous lemon bars. When she hugged me and whispered, "You did good, kid," I felt something break open inside. Gratitude, grief, relief, all of it crashing together in my chest. The first night in that house was cold and quiet. No furniture, just a mattress on the floor, my laptop, and the echo of old pipes. But I slept like a rock. For the first time in years, I wasn't under someone else's roof, walking on eggshells. I was home. Of course, the place was a mess. The floors were scratched to hell, The wallpaper was peeling like old scabs, and the bathroom sink leaked just enough to whisper every hour like a slow clock. But I didn't care. I was determined to fix every inch of it myself. I spent weekends watching tutorials on YouTube: how to lay tile, how to caulk, how to paint trim without ruining your wrists. I learned how to use a circular saw, terrifying at first, how to clean out gutters, gross, and how to properly shut off water valves, learned that one the hard way. Every repair felt symbolic, like I was fixing a part of myself. The more I worked on the house, the more I began to feel like I belonged in it. I documented the process on social media, mostly to stay accountable. Before and after photos, little videos of me failing spectacularly at basic DIY, and occasional pep talks to anyone watching. I never expected people to care, but slowly, the account grew. Comments came in: "Thanks for being real. Watching you fix this place is weirdly healing. I got kicked out too. Seeing you thrive gives me hope." I wasn't trying to be a role model. I was just trying to stay upright. But the messages meant something. They reminded me I wasn't alone. And then one day, it happened. I was scrolling through DMs when I saw a name I hadn't read in years. David Carter, my father. There was no profile picture, just the message: "Saw your videos. Looks like you're doing well. House looks nice." That was it. No sorry, oh, miss you, no explanation. Just that. I stared at the screen for a long time, heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, aching to type something, anything, but I didn't. Instead, I closed the app and went outside. I sat on my half-finished porch and listened to the wind rattle through the trees. That message wasn't what I wanted, but it was something. Proof that he'd seen me, that he knew I was okay, or at least surviving. I told myself I didn't care, but a week later, while scrolling a local real estate listing, something I did obsessively now, out of habit, I saw it. The house I grew up in, for sale. Same cracked driveway, same paint chipped siding, same lopsided mailbox I'd once accidentally backed into when I was learning to drive. There it was, listed like any other house, sitting on a screen, waiting for a buyer. I clicked on the photos. The inside hadn't changed much. Same old carpet, same tiny kitchen, but it looked sadder now, empty. The life had gone out of it. I stared at the photo of the living room where I'd once been told to pack my bags. I felt a tightness in my chest, not grief exactly, something more complicated, like the ghost of disappointment. I clicked on the seller's info. No realtor, listed by owner, David Carter. He was selling it himself. I couldn't stop staring at the listing. The house was priced low to low for the market. Either my father was desperate, or he just wanted to get rid of it quickly. I refreshed the page several times, like it might disappear or suddenly say, "Sold." But it stayed there, taunting me. I didn't tell Jordan or Cheryl. I didn't want their opinions yet. This was something I needed to sit with alone. That night, I lay awake, staring at my own ceiling. My own ceiling, in my own house. I imagined what it would feel like to buy the house where I was once disowned. Not to live in it, I didn't want that, but to own it. To have the deed in my hands. To walk through those halls on my terms. It wasn't about revenge. At least, not fully. It was about reclaiming something that was taken from me. The next morning, I sent a short message to the seller through the site. "Hi, I'm interested in the property. Would love to arrange a visit." Jay didn't use my full name. I wanted to see what he'd do if he didn't recognize me. 2 hours later, he replied, "I'll be home Thursday after 4. Come by then." No realtors. No formalities. Just like that, it was arranged. Thursday came too fast. I parked down the street, just out of sight of the house. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. I hadn't seen my father in nearly 6 years. The last time I saw him, his face was red with rage, shouting, "You're not my son anymore." As I walked down that cracked driveway, I almost turned the car around, but then I remembered the message he sent. Short, yes. Cold, but he'd reached out. That meant something, or at least it used to. I walked up the driveway slowly, each step feeling like it belonged to another version of me, the teenage version, scared and small, always hoping for approval. The front door opened before I knocked. He stood there in jeans and a flannel shirt, older than I remembered, with deeper lines under his eyes and a limp in his stance. His hair had thinned, his shoulders were hunched. Time had chipped away at him too. He looked at me for a moment, then blinked. "Jay?" I didn't say anything, just nodded. He stepped aside to let me in. The house smelled the same, a mixture of dust, lemon cleaner, and something faintly metallic. The wallpaper in the hallway was peeling worse than I remembered. A chair sat in the living room that looked like it hadn't moved in decades. We stood there awkwardly, like strangers in a shared memory. "So," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "you're looking to buy?" I glanced around. "Maybe. Depends." He gave a slow nod, avoiding eye contact. "It's not in great shape. I can't keep up with it anymore." There was a long silence. Then I said, "Why are you selling?" He hesitated, then answered too quickly, "It's just time." I wanted to ask more. I wanted to ask why he never called, why it took him 6 years to send a message, why he looked like a shadow of the man who'd once thrown me out. But instead, I walked through the house. The kitchen tiles were cracked. The fridge was humming too loud. The bathroom sink still leaked. Some things never changed. I paused at the door to my old bedroom. It had been turned into storage. Boxes stacked high, a broken fan, an old treadmill covered in dust. But my name was still carved into the closet door. I'd done it with a screwdriver when I was 10. I traced the letters with my fingers. I felt something shift in me. Not anger, not sadness, just release. When I returned to the living room, he was sitting on the edge of the couch like a schoolboy waiting for judgment. He didn't look at me when he asked, "Do you hate me?" It was so quiet. I heard the refrigerator click on from across the house. I sat across from him and said, "I did. For a long time." He nodded slowly, his lips pressed together, his eyes glassy. "I'm sorry." The words landed like a dull thud. They were late, painfully late, and yet still heavy. I didn't say anything. I didn't cry. I just looked at the man who had once been everything to me, and who then became nothing. And now, maybe something in between. He cleared his throat. "If you want the house, I'll lower the price for you." I looked at him sharply. "Why?" He gave a sad smile. "Because I'd rather sell it to you than a stranger." It wasn't enough, but it was something. When I left, I stood on the porch for a long time. The sun was setting, casting golden light over the yard. I looked at the cracked steps, the old mailbox, the tree I once climbed to escape bedtime, and I thought, maybe this was how healing begins, not with grand apologies or perfect closure, but with standing in the wreckage and choosing what to rebuild. I didn't make the offer that day. I told him I'd think about it, and I did, for days, until finally I made the call. "I'll take it," I said. I don't know what I expected when I bought my childhood home. Closure? Maybe. Some sense of power. A strange, poetic ending to a very long, painful chapter. What I didn't expect was his voice on the other end of the phone, 2 days after I signed the final papers. "Jay," he said, hesitant. I don't have anywhere else to go." I was silent. "Just for a little while," he added quickly, "till I get back on my feet. You can even charge me rent." There was a pause so thick I could feel the weight of it pressing against my chest. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't trying to guilt me. He was asking for a roof. My roof. The son he threw away was now the only one with the key to the house he once ruled over. I told him I needed time to think, and I did. I spent that night pacing across my living room, calling Cheryl, calling Jordan. They both asked the same question. What do you want? Not what would be fair, not what would be right, but what did I want? And I didn't know, because part of me still heard his voice calling me a disgrace, still remembered his fists slamming the table, still saw the door closing behind me with all the weight of rejection I carried for years. But another part, the part that survived, that built a life, that learned to forgive myself, wondered what it would mean to offer something different than he had offered me. Not because he deserved it, but because I needed to know who I was when I had the power. The next day, I called him back. "I have 2 conditions," I said. "First, you pay rent. Nothing big, just enough to contribute." He agreed quickly. "Second, you don't get to talk about who I am. Not once, not ever. You don't question my life, my friends, or my identity." There was a pause. Then, "Okay." And just like that, My father moved into the guest room of the house I bought. It was awkward, painfully so. He cooked for himself, kept to his side of the house, and barely spoke unless spoken to. Some nights, I heard him coughing in his room. Other times, I caught him staring at photos on the mantle, ones I had taken with Jordan, with Cheryl, at graduation, at the bookstore reopening party. He never said anything. He just looked. Quietly. About a week in, I came home late from work to find the kitchen spotless and the trash already taken out. I opened the fridge and saw a fresh pitcher of iced tea, my favorite. The way my mom used to make it. He didn't mention it. Neither did I. We were like two ghosts haunting the same house, tied together by history, but unsure if we belonged in the same present. Until one night, I came home and found him sitting at the dining table, staring at something. A letter. My letter. The one I wrote the week after he kicked me out, the one I never sent. It had been folded and hidden in an old desk drawer in my childhood room. I guess I'd left it behind. I froze. He looked up slowly, his eyes wet. Why didn't you send this? I didn't know how to answer. That letter was full of everything I never got to say, the heartbreak, the confusion, the shame, the anger. I poured every ounce of myself into it, then left it buried like a scar I didn't want reopened. I didn't think you'd care, I said. He swallowed hard. I didn't. Not then. He folded the letter again with shaking hands. But I do now. I didn't cry. Not yet. But something shifted in the air between us. Something fragile, like a thread strung between two cliffs. I didn't forgive him that night. But for the first time in years, I saw a man, not a monster. A man who had failed, who had aged, who had been wrong, and who was trying, in the only way he knew how, to reach back across the distance. After that night, the silence between us didn't feel quite as heavy. He didn't apologize, not directly, but he started showing up, in small ways. One morning, he offered to drive me to work when my car wouldn't start. He didn't make a big deal of it, just tossed me the keys and said, "You're gonna be late." Another evening, I found a box of my old things he'd pulled from the attic. Drawings I made in 3rd grade, my high school yearbook, even a birthday card I made him when I was 9. He'd kept them. It was strange watching this man who once told me I was no son of his now trying to be part of my life without asking for a place in it. He never brought up Jordan, never asked about him. But one Friday night, I came home to find an extra plate at the table and lasagna in the oven. I blinked. He cleared his throat. "Thought your boyfriend might be joining us." He said, boyfriend, like it was just a fact. No venom, no awkward pause. I didn't know what stunned me more, the invitation or the quiet respect in his tone. Jordan did come by that night. He was cautious, polite, a little stiff. But as the evening wore on, I saw something shift. My dad asked him about his work as a physical therapist. They shared stories about bad bosses. They laughed. Not much, but enough. When Jordan left, my dad simply said, "He's good for you." That night, I sat on the porch steps, staring out at the quiet street. My dad came out with 2 beers just like he used to with his buddies and handed me one. "I don't expect you to forget," he said. "But I'm trying, Jay. I really am." I didn't answer. I didn't know how. Forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a process. And I was still somewhere in the middle, but I clinked my bottle against his. That was something. Over the next few weeks, life found its rhythm. We coexisted, sometimes even like a family. There were still cracks. He flinched when certain commercials came on. Sometimes he'd say something outdated without realizing it. But instead of shutting down, he listened when I corrected him. He apologized when he messed up. And not once did he use the words "but" or "just." For the first time, my dad was learning and unlearning at the same time. One Saturday afternoon, we went to visit Cheryl. It was her birthday, and she'd invited us both. I offered to go alone, but Dad insisted. "I should meet the woman who helped raise my son when I didn't," he said. At her house, Cheryl greeted him with her usual warmth, but also with the steel of someone who remembered everything. They sat on the patio while I helped in the kitchen, and when I peeked out later, I saw them deep in conversation, not arguing, talking. Later, Cheryl pulled me aside and said, "He's not the man he was, but don't rush to believe he's someone new. Let time prove it." I nodded. I was doing exactly that. That night, My dad left a note on the kitchen counter. I was wrong. About everything. You didn't need to change. I did. It was short. Almost too late. But it meant more to me than anything he'd ever said. The note my dad left lingered in my mind for days. I folded it and kept it in my wallet, maybe out of sentiment. Maybe as proof that people could change, even when you'd bet your life they wouldn't. Jordan noticed the difference in me. I laughed more, slept better. I didn't flinch when my phone rang with my dad's name on it. And when I brought him up in conversation, it wasn't laced with bitterness. One evening, while we were cooking dinner together, Jordan looked at me and said, "You know, you're starting to smile like you used to. Back when we first met." That hit me harder than I expected, because I hadn't realized just how much weight I'd been carrying. For years, I'd lived like I was bracing for a blow from my family, from the world, even from myself. But lately, I'd been walking taller, breathing easier. My dad didn't become perfect overnight, he still slipped. Sometimes he tried too hard to make up for the past, like when he showed up unannounced at Jordan's clinic with sandwiches for the staff. Jordan texted me, half amused, half panicked, "Your dad's here. He brought tuna melts. Help." But the effort was there, the awkward sincerity, the clumsy attempts to connect. And for once, it didn't feel like guilt, it felt like love. Then came the news. The landlord called to say he was selling the house we lived in. We had 60 days to move. My stomach dropped. It had taken so long to feel rooted again. And now, the ground was shifting beneath my feet. I told my dad over dinner. He went quiet, thoughtful. The next day, he handed me a folded flyer. "There's a place down the block. Been on the market for months. I think you should buy it." I blinked. "Buy it? You've been saving," he said. "Working hard. You deserve to plant something that's yours." I hadn't even considered home ownership. But when I saw the house, something clicked. It wasn't fancy, but it had charm: an old porch swing, ivy on the fence, a tree out front that looked perfect for Christmas lights. And then I had an idea, a crazy, full circle kind of idea. "What if I buy your house instead?" I asked him. He frowned. "You want this house?" "Yeah," I said. "I've already rebuilt so much inside it. Might as well own the foundation too." He didn't answer right away, just stared at me like he was trying to decide whether I was serious, or maybe whether he deserved that kind of grace. Eventually, he said, "If you're sure, I'll sell it to you. Below market." "Dad," I smiled, "I'll pay what it's worth." But I think we both knew what I really meant. We were finally starting to see each other's worth. The paperwork went through faster than I expected. 1 month later, I held the keys to the house I once stormed out of this time as its rightful owner. Closing day was surreal. I walked through each room, memories crowding the corners like shadows. The hallway where I first shouted at my dad, the living room where he turned his back on me, the bedroom door he never opened after I left. It all felt smaller now, not just the space but the pain, the weight of what had happened here. It hadn't vanished, but it didn't control me anymore. I took a deep breath in the kitchen and looked at my reflection in the microwave door, older, calmer, standing tall in a place that had once tried to shrink me. That evening, we held a small housewarming dinner. Jordan brought homemade lasagna. My dad showed up with a half-dead orchid and a 6-pack of beer. He didn't say much at first, just wandered through the house like he was visiting a ghost. Then, as we sat in the backyard under string lights Jordan had hung the night before, my dad raised his bottle and said, "I never imagined this. You, here, me being invited." I laughed softly. "Me neither. But here we are." He nodded, quiet for a moment. "You made a home out of something I broke. I hope you know how proud I am." That word proud, it wrapped around me like a warm coat. I didn't know how much I'd been craving it until I heard it spoken out loud. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood in the front yard and looked at the house, my house. The porch light glowed softly. The wind moved through the trees. It was peaceful in a way it had never been before. I knew there was more to rebuild inside me, and between me and my dad. But for the first time, I wasn't angry about it. Healing had stopped feeling like punishment. It felt like freedom. I pulled out my phone, opened a new document, and started typing. This house used to be where everything ended. Now, it's where everything begins again. And deep down I knew I didn't just buy a house. I reclaimed a part of myself. The following weeks felt like a new chapter, one I hadn't dared to imagine years ago when I was sleeping on Jordan's couch, heartbroken and humiliated. My home became a place where friends gathered, where music played from the kitchen every Sunday, where laughter came easier, and slowly, tentatively, my father became part of it. He'd come by on weekends at first with excuses, dropping off tools, asking if I needed help fixing the fence, bringing over food. But eventually, he'd stay longer, sit on the porch with me, listen. He wasn't the man I needed back then, but maybe he was trying to become the man I needed now. One Sunday afternoon, as we worked side by side planting lavender in the front yard, he paused and said, "You know, I used to think I was protecting you." I didn't respond right away, just kept digging. He continued, "From the world, from what people would say. I thought if I was hard on you, you'd change, be safe." But I was just afraid. I looked up. His hands were dirty, trembling slightly. His voice cracked when he said, "I was wrong." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was real. And for the first time, I didn't need perfect. I reached over and handed him the last plant. "Then let's grow something better this time." That night, as the sun set and the scent of fresh soil lingered, I stood at the edge of the yard and watched my father gather his things. He turned to wave. For once, I waved back without hesitation. Inside, Jordan had just lit candles for dinner. Cheryl had baked something that smelled like cinnamon. The house was warm, alive, full of second chances. I used to think being disowned had destroyed me, but in truth, it cleared the path. I'd lost a father but found my voice. I'd lost a house but built a home. And maybe, just maybe, that's what it means to grow up.